So, I'm curious about Mr. Patch, or whatever he's called, the big dragon guy. Uh, and I want to know why I'm curious about him. I want to know what it is exactly. So, he's a huge dinosaur in a tent, basically, right? He's a huge dinosaur in a tent. And there's something about him, I guess, that's really majestic to me. I don't know what it is. I think it's because he's a dragon, he's some sort of a dinosaur, but he's also not real, quote unquote, right? He's literally patched up, made from other parts, sort of stitched together. And it's also partly that he towers at the center of this area, right? I think that's partly it. That this area, the whole of Witchy World, is like a cross, in a sense, or some sort of like a cross, right? We have four areas, more or less, one in front of the other. And then the very center of the area, there's this tent. The tent itself points towards the center in that it is an object that spikes upwards, right? And then inside this tent, instead of a sort of central pole or a central kind of column holding the tent together, we have the dragon. The dragon sort of stands at the very center of this area. And it's made of these patches. It's sort of stitched together. I think there's also this constant issue with dragons in general in this game, or sort of reptilian type creatures, because Mumbo himself seems to be a sort of reptilian type creature. We know that he is modeled off a giant Jinjo, and Jinjos themselves are, it's hard to tell what they are, but they appear to be sort of like little flying lizards. I know that that's obviously just my intuition about this whole thing, but Mumbo's renders, right, his kind of manual book renders show his skin to be fairly scaly. You know, he's clearly not like he's not a hairy animal, and he's not a bird. So I'm somehow obsessed with this idea of dragons. I mean, Grunty herself is green, and is, in some sense, very much like a snake in that sense. And I think probably all of this is in my mind as an idea because of how much this game likes to toy around with dragons, right? I mean, it's easy to forget that this game is modeled off Dream, right? Which, right now, I was getting confused. I was going to say Dream had dinosaurs in it, but I'm getting confused here with Dinosaur Planet. However, to justify this, I would say that there is some sort of an overlap in Rareware's catalog between these ideas as a whole. Because we have in Dream, the arrival of this idea of a giant dinosaur stomping over the land. So it is sort of implied that there might be dinosaurs here. And then, of course, later we have this whole Dinosaur Planet game, which is similar in theme or in aesthetic. The Rareware idea of like a beautiful island being explored by an animal kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm not sure if this ties in with this at all, but there is this idea floating around in Rareware's games of dinosaurs, right? A place with dinosaurs. There are dinosaurs in Conker's Bad Fur Day, right? Conker returned to the land of dinosaurs. Banjo-Kazooie, obviously, returned to the land of dinosaurs in Pterodactyland. Right, so there is this theme of dragons floating around. There's the theme of dragons. There's Kazooie herself transforms into a dragon. That's one of her main transformations in this game, is becoming a dragon. So she herself becomes a green beast, like Grunty. So I'm not sure exactly what to make of this, but there is something about Mr. Patch. I'm going to look his name up. Yes, Mr. Patch. There is something else about him, which is that his life force drains out from him through a tube that is placed sort of between his legs, right? And it's easy to interpret that as a penis. I think Banjo-Tooie as a game makes it very easy to interpret that as a penis, especially because it is a game that is filled with euphemisms about genitals in general and sex. It is filled specifically with euphemisms about genitals and like semen, basically. There's a lot of references to penises and semen. And so I think it's easy to interpret that as a penis, and his life force drains through there, so he dies when that happens, right? I think that it might be interesting to note, of course, that in Pterodactyland, Mumbo's hut is kind of in front of a giant penis, or what has been commonly referred to in like fan observations of this game as a penis construction in the sand, in the rocks, a penis that arises, and is a penis that is furthermore ejecting something, urine, semen, whatever it is. It's a penis that's sort of ejecting liquid or particles out of itself. So Mumbo is here literally like the owner of a giant penis. He's literally like this skull, this head, and then this penis in front of him. And there's a whole sort of, the anecdote about how Mumbo's magic, so his spells, or his signature sentence, Ikam Bokum, is Grant Kirkhope saying Uminaka. Oh no, yeah, okay, right. So I got that confused. It's Umanaka, which is what Mumbo says, is Grant Kirkhope going Uminakas, referring to his testicles because of something that he was going through at the time. So there is already in Mumbo this kind of genital issue somehow in him. Like he represents the penis and the testicles in some way. And the game, I think also, that's the thing that intrigues me, associates that specifically to ejaculation and semen. This happens clearly in Jolly Roger, right? Jolly Roger. The menu in Jolly Roger's tavern is very obviously, and I wouldn't be surprised if this has been acknowledged by the team, but it's just completely obviously a reference to semen. Like the different things that you can order at this tavern are like variations on semen. It's almost like all you can eat there is semen. All the drinks they offer are semen. And it's particularly emphasized as being like the semen of, let's say, traditional masculinity as traditionally viewed. So, for example, I think Maggie Malpass mentions that they're going to have a bunch of sailors there who need relief or something, and it's also said in this sort of euphemistic sort of way. So we're kind of assuming, or a picture gets created, right? The joke that is being made is that Jolly Roger's Tavern is a place that is very sexually charged. And and probably like orgiastically charged, right? Because it is a lot of people, a lot of semen, like kind of ridiculous amounts of semen, right? If that's the thing with jokes, that's the thing with mythology in general, right? I mean, this stuff happens in Greek mythology and in other myths around the world, that semen and genitals and things like that are exaggerated in their amount in trying to express whatever it is that is trying to be expressed. So the thing here is that all the jokes and all the comments that they make paint this picture that this is a place where gallons and gallons of semen are produced, and this semen is being eaten and drunk, and there's a lot of people there. So it's this sort of like Dionysian orgy, like a sort of almost like a superhuman kind of orgy, an orgy of gods. And so the role of the penis in this game seems to have something to do with that, I think, while at the same time retaining its value as the traditional, again, this sort of traditional method of conception, of prolonging life and of creating a baby, right? From the point of view of it being the man, the one who bestows life upon the woman, right? And who bestows life onto the womb and creates life, right? So it's a very like it's an archaic vision, right? It's a vision that obviously still survives, but it's a vision that's very deeply rooted because, again, myths and stories from early history seem to view things that way, right? They view the dominant male as the one who gives life and the woman as the one who is almost like dead, right? So the man is alive, the woman is dead. The man brings life, the woman just sort of receives it. So this view of the penis, I think, also exists in this game. I guess I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm not explaining why, like, or how, in which instances this view of the penis exists in this game. Well, let's see. My first hunch is that it simply has to do with children, again, with childbirth in the sense of children. And so this completely separates both themes. On the one hand, we have this sort of euphemistic, jokey, orgiastic reference to sex, and specifically to the penis and semen, right? And then on the other hand, we have a bunch of stories in this game relating to children and relating to parents trying to find children. So it's funny, right? Because it's almost like it's parents in this game are trying to find children. These children already exist, so they've already been born. But in this theme of parents trying to find children, it almost seems as if it's parents trying to have children. That is to say, parents, trying to obtain children, find them in the way that one would find a child in a myth, again, right? The way how in myths children are brought to you by birds flying in the sky, or they're born from flowers, or they come from the depths of the ocean, or whatever, right? Like children sort of magically appear in ways that have nothing to do with sex. It completely unlinks it from sex. But I think that in this game there are enough references to this to make it more than just a series of mini games about children, right? Because we have, for example, Mrs. Boggy is trying to find her children in Witchy World. The aliens in Fazizi not Frizzy Peak, and the Hailfire Peaks are trying to find their children too. And I should make a list of them at some point. I mean, there are many interactions with children. Not all of them have to do with parents. It's true, there are the children pigs who are playing by Jolly Roger. I think that there is a turtle who's trying to find children in some way. You might even accept the idea that the Jinjo King is trying to find all of the Jinjos. And the Jinjos are his children in some way. They're also the citizens that are under his power. But in some way there is this search for creatures who are smaller and under your command in some way. Another example, of course, is Terry. Terry the pterodactyl in Pterodactyland, who is also... I can't remember what he's doing, but he's either trying to find his children, or he's trying to find the eggs, or wants them to hatch or something. I think it's, the eggs probably. And there is another dinosaur in Pterodactyland, I think, who is also trying to find her children, and you find them for her. So there is a lot of children in this game, I think. And I think that even this theme of the man being alive and the woman being dead, this sort of old mythological vision, is present in this game as well, right? Because there are a lot of dead or missing women. We have, of course, Banjo's sister is missing, or who knows, right? She's missing or dead in this game. Grunty herself is dead, right? Grunty herself is dead. She's a skeleton. We have, in a sense, Kazooie herself. I know this is harder to argue, but I think it depends on all of the other contexts to make sense. But there is this idea that Kazooie is inside Banjo's backpack. Kazooie is hidden. Kazooie is buried deep in the darkness. All right, she's sort of not completely out in the open or visible as Banjo is. And there are other examples like that. So I think this game is sort of trying to work through this process. I think that the game is somehow trying to work through these themes of the separation between the masculine gender role and the feminine gender role, and what kind of assignments have been given to them both, right? So in what way is the feminine gender role limited in its power? In what way is the masculine gender role limited in its power? In what ways are these in what way are these wounds trying to be worked through or healed in some way, right? I mean, you could say, for example, that the theme of the dead woman is attempting to rise up into life. Grunty is dead. She's trying to be born again, right? Maggie Malpass has been devoured by a fish. She's dead, but she comes back to life, right? And at the same time, you might also say that Banjo is alive, but is sort of succumbing to death. He's entering the underworld. He's being devoured by the beast in some way. So that there is this mutual kind of devouring and coming back to life that is taking place in some way. I think this sort of leads us again to Terry, the dinosaur, because that's sort of what I wanted to talk about again. Terry is also a dinosaur who stands at the center of the area, right? Terry stands at the center of the area. I think he literally is in the center of this area, on the top, on the peak of this mountain, of this tower of stone. And he is a father on the top of this place. Now, I'm not exactly sure what to say about this, but there seems to be a resonance in my head between this and Witchy World. It seems like we have a theme of a dragon who is at the center of the world, or perhaps a dragon who is the center of the world. The dragon is the center of Mandala, right? And the hero goes towards the dragon to reclaim some sort of treasure, right? But what treasure do they have? Because in both cases, Mr. Patch, the treasure, I mean, the treasure is always a jiggy, but Mr. Patch ejects all of this life force from his penis. Terry, in some way, also is like this image of the father who has given birth to children out of his own will, right? His life is the only life that has played a role here. So again, it's sort of related to his penis in some way symbolically. And in the sense that he is a dinosaur who sits at the top of a peak of a mountain, or at the center of a peak, right? At the center of a world. He's not in any old place of the world. He's at the very center of the world and is some sort of a paternal figure who creates life out of his own accord. So it's sort of like God. It's a divine image, right? It's the typical sort of image of God as a man who creates life on his own and is in some way at the center of the world, in the sense that he is everywhere in the world. He's in the central position. Wherever you may be, it's the center, or, the center somehow represents that. I guess the question that's left to answer is, why are they dragons? Why dragons? I find that interesting, because we don't have this vision of God as a dragon. Not that much, right? At least like in Western kind of the sort of Western world that this game is appealing to is a world where the image of God is generally just a man, a human being, right? That probably applies to a lot of countries, but I think that in any case, it's something that feels slightly pagan, slightly kind of interesting, slightly heretical, and yet it uses all of the status quo imagery of God in the monotheistic man in the clouds sense, right? It's literally a man in the clouds, right? A man who sits at the top of the world, up on a mountain, and there are all these themes relating to masculinity, or the sort of patriarchal rule over the world, right? The patriarch of the world. But at the same time, there's this idea that it's a dragon or a beast or a dinosaur, which evokes all sorts of other ideas, I think. And so, a lot is going on here. This weird mix of this pagan thing and this this heretical idea and this kind of status quo accepted idea. And that sort of relates it back to Jolly Roger, right? This mix of sex, sort of pagan heretical orgy, right? Where buckets of semen are being thrown around or whatever. But then at the same time, this kind of status quo idea of the family, right? Just the traditional kind of heterosexual family, all of the children being rescued by their parents, the parent trying to find the children, the family being present in this game in some way, right? So we have the family on the one hand, and then the kind of anti-family, completely new, completely sort of, yeah, anti-status quo image of the orgy, and somehow both are being reconciled in some way. The question would be to see, I guess, how they're being reconciled, in what ways they're being reconciled. Are they being reconciled in a way that avoids trauma, that is to say, that avoids confrontation of trauma? Because there is an aspect of this that to me seems a little fishy, right? Because there is this way in which it's almost like you can have your orgies over on this side and you can have your peaceful families on this side, but don't let them mix, right? There is this thing about this whole setup that seems like it highlights some sort of a repression, some sort of a mechanism of repression in any case, especially when you connect it to the Jinjo King and the idea of children as vassals or children as the people being ruled over, right? That then maybe this game is precisely like highlighting this weird way in which perhaps your like dominion over you as a person could be echoed in these structures that have to do with pleasure, sex, affection, gender expression, behavior that is connected in some way to the genitals. But at the same time, you also get this idea in this game, or this sense, that something is trying to be united in an alchemical way, that somehow a union between these worlds is trying to be achieved in a way that is more like symbolic and powerful, that acquires a union that's more solid and groundbreaking at the same time, or more real, that has less to do with repressive, unreal kind of fantasies that hide away things that are real and that are being hidden, but that it has to do with something real coming out into the surface and then being confronted. After all, the whole game is about that in some way, right? The whole game is about completing jigsaw puzzles, images that were not complete before, and now they're complete. You couldn't see these images before. They were hidden, they were repressed. Slowly, through the process of this game, these things are being seen, things that you weren't seeing before, that probably you didn't exactly enjoy seeing or want to see in some way, or that someone didn't want you to see, or whatever it may be, are being seen. So it feels as if the game is doing both things at once, as most of these games seem to do, as most symbolic stories seem to do. That somehow the very language of repression is being used to tackle that very repression. So that's interesting. And anyway, that's probably enough that I want to talk about today. And yeah,